everybody. Welcome to In This Corner, the podcast of Buck 56. Boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, greatest memories, and moments. We cover it all with flash and panache and the Grovester, Lee Groves. He's a writer, he's an author, he's a CompuBox counter, he's a historian, and he's a lot of things there in friendly West Virginia. He's probably head of the fire department, the police department, and he's probably the mayor of friendly West Virginia. How you doing, Lee?
Doing well. And another title, executive producer.
Yes, of this program. And boy, you got a lot to get to because we got a lot to get to right now. Our special guest will be the Island Girl. She's a former three-weight division world champion. She's in the Women's Boxing Hall of Fame. I think someday she'll be in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I know she's been on the ballot. She is Sumya Anani. She'll join us. But before that, let's get to reviews and previews and some other boxing news.
Okay, well, last Saturday was an extremely busy one in that there were high-profile fights staged all around the world. For example, ESPN Plus streamed a card emanating from Kazakhstan, and in the main event, home country hero Janibek Alimkhanuly retained his IBF and WBO middleweight titles with a fifth-round TKO over the previously undefeated Anwel Gamisenge. Say that twice.
Not even going to say it once.
Gamisenge gave it his best shot and even managed to cut Alimkhanuly's eye, but a monster left cross scored the fight's only knockdown. Gamisenge arose, but he was too unsteady to continue, so he retains his belt. Next up was a DAZN stream card from Manchester, England, but this time the home fighter did not win as Croatia's Filip Hrgović defeated England's Joe Joyce by a 10-round unanimous decision. Now, a couple of years ago, this would have been an even bigger fight as Joyce was the WBO interim champion and Hrgović was the highly rated boogeyman. And while this was a good action fight, both men were markedly slower and much easier to hit. Returning to ESPN Plus, Top Rank staged a show at the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas, not far from you, Smitty. And the three main fights saw Lindolfo Delgado win a majority decision over Elvis Rodriguez, the dynamic Abdullah Mason register a six-round corner retirement against Carlos Ornelas, and in his first main event, Olympic silver medalist Richard Torres Jr. win a unanimous decision over Guido Vianello. Now, I know you've had some very good things to say about both Mason and Torres. What did you think of their fights here?
Well, one guy, Mason's going to go as far as he wants to go, I think. We don't know that, those intangibles. Torres, I think he's probably reached his peak, of what he's going to do. And I didn't like the fact, I dig the dude, but all the stuff that went on with the in-ring walk and all that setup, I don't like all that. I think it takes away from your focus a little bit. And when you take away from your focus, and especially if you're not a guy that, has super athleticism and attributes, you need that focus. I enjoy both of them, but Mason, he looks like he could be perhaps the real deal. We'll find out.
Yeah, we will find out. And finally, the Land Down Under played host to Tim Tszyu's comeback fight following his back-to-back losses to Sebastian Fundora and IBF 154-pound champion Bakram Murtazaliev. And there, he scored a much-needed fourth-round TKO over Joey Spencer. It was a very impressive performance against the perfect opponent. And in the final round, which lasted just 2 minutes and 18 seconds, Tszyu landed 44 total punches and 41 power shots, both the best single-round numbers he has produced in 12 CompuBox tracked fights. What do you think of Tszyu?
It was the right opponent, and he came back and got a win, and it was good to see that. I think what they'll look for, I think they'll put him in. I think they're going to set up a fight with Thurman. That's what I think is going to Keith Thurman.
That makes total sense. Thurman fought there recently. He was at ringside. It makes perfect sense. Good fight, too. As far as the previews is concerned, DAZN will stream a welterweight title unification match between IBF champion Jaron Ennis and WBA counterpart Ennis-Eimantas Stanionis. Now, I believe Stanionis has the hardest and most accurate jab in the sport, And I've been impressed by his patience, his solid fundamentals, and his tenacity. He may be the best all around opponent Ennis has yet faced. And if Ennis has issues making weight, and since we're taping on Tuesday, we don't know that yet. You guys will know. I think Stanionis is good enough to pull off the upset. But if Ennis makes 147 in a healthy manner, I think his height, his reach, his power, I think he'll get the unanimous decision victory. Now we move on to the news items. There are a couple of news items that we have on tap. On Monday, it was reported that undisputed light heavyweight champion Dmitry Bivol chose to relinquish the WBC light heavyweight title because he wanted to pursue a third fight with Artur Beterbiev instead of fighting the WBC's mandatory challenger, David Benavidez, who happens to be the WBC secondary titleist. Now, here's what happened. For years, fights involving undisputed championships have used a rotation system to determine which of the organizations would serve as the lead body. And under this system, the IBF was to be the lead for Bivol's next fight. Meanwhile, the WBC tried to jump the line and they ordered Bivol to fight Benavidez next. Team Bivol said no, and the WBC did what it did. And by the way, Samson Lukowicz said in a statement that, quote, "We will give the winner of Bivol Beterbiev 3 the opportunity to get the WBC title back at any time. We're one phone call away to make this fight happen," end quote. This is what's wrong with the four-belt system. The IBF's mandatory challenger is Michael Eifert, and he had to take step-aside money in order to have the second Beterbiev-Bivol fight happen. Now, Bivol wants to fight Beterbiev a third time. They're either going to have to pay Eifert a second step-aside fee, or they'll strip Bivol of that title. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. But with all these fighters fighting twice a year, there are a lot of guys who are withering on the vine, and Michael Eifert is one of them.
Well, we know Benavidez will fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. I think he would have preferred to get the title in the ring. I wouldn't mind seeing Bivol Beterbiev 3, but I think Bivol could have taken a fight in between, in and around. There's a lot of different things you can do. This is the alphabet crappy soup stuff that goes on in boxing, and it is what it is. But Benavidez was going to get that title anyway, and so I think eventually, so we'll just see where it plays out.
And then
how it plays out.
And then the final note is a pretty sad one. Word got around that Hall of Fame trainer Kenny Adams passed away at age 84. He was an assistant coach for the 1984 Olympic team that won 11 medals, including 9 gold medals. And he was the head coach of the 1988 squad that won 8 medals, including 3 golds. His first world champion was Rene Jacot, who scored Ring Magazine's 1989 Upset of the Year by dethroning WBC Super Welterweight champion Donald Curry, who is now in the Hall of Fame. Jacot was the first of 26 professional world champions that Kenny Adams trained. And we had the pleasure of having him on our podcast on episode number 21 in June 2021. He was elected to the International Boxing Hall of Fame in the class of 2024, but unfortunately he was unable to attend induction weekend. What do you remember about Kenny?
And Kenny worked with guys. Listen to some of these names that he worked with: Diego Corrales, Edwin Valero, Freddie Norwood, Frankie Lyles, Terrence Crawford, Johnny Tapia, Jorge Linares, Ray Mercer, Al Cole, Vince Phillips, Charles Murray, Eddie Cook, Kennedy McKinney. So he's been with so many. I love the guy. We had this great relationship. I think he dug me because I was even shorter than him and feisty like him. He was a military guy through and through, which I am not, but I have so much respect for those dudes. And we went into the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame together in 2016, and it was a thrill to go in with somebody like him. I think Phil Torrance, another excellent trainer, went in on that same one. Kenny was a guy that I think, the youngsters today should look to and study. and see what he did and learn a little bit about him because he belongs in that pantheon, of great trainers. I won't name any names, but there are guys that got into some of these halls ahead of him that shouldn't have, and it was because of visibility and the fact that these pugilistic pups. I almost said punks. I can say that too about most of them. They don't know anything about history like you do and like I do. And I think he was a great trainer. More importantly, I really dug him, and boy, was he great at. Him and I have an eloquent way of cursing that Joe Pesci-esque, if you will. And rest in peace, Kenny.
Indeed, rest in peace.
And I think that's a time and a point and a place to take a break, and we'll come back with the Island Girl, Sumya Anani, right after this. In this corner, the podcast of Buck 56, boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, greatest memories and moments. And by the way, later on in the program, when we end things, Lee is going to do his top 10 female fighters of all times. That'll be the last part of the program. But right now, we are joined by a very special guest, and I had the pleasure of calling some of her fights. She is the Island Girl. She is Sumya Anani, 25-3-1, I believe, with 10 knockouts, 3 weight division champion. I think it was lightweight. Was it super lightweight and welterweight, I believe, if my mind is correct. And she joins us. Sumya, great to see you. And first off, let me apologize that I wasn't able to. You invited me to dinner. I was a little bit under the weather. And Lee will probably interrupt and say, Smitty's a recluse. He doesn't go anywhere. But thank you. I really wish I could have seen you, but I'm seeing you now, and it's great to see you.
Yeah, so good to see you again, Inspector Gadget.
Yes, okay. Here we go. Let's get it out of the way. Here's one of them.
Where's the jacket and the hat that goes? You got to be the whole outfit. Hey, there's your Halloween costume right there.
Yeah. Why did you call? Wait a minute. Because Lee asked me this morning. I don't know if why did you call me that?
Because the first time I met you, every time I've seen you, you had that silver suitcase, you had the big hat like Inspector Gadget wore, and you had the jacket with the big, the trench coat that pulled up, and you were just like this detective, like walking.
That's that. Actually, all of that is true, with the exception I will never put on a hat, not when you got beautiful hair like I do and you do. But yeah, you coined me that, and we got a chance to meet. But we got a lot to cover. And I'm gonna do it the same way I do it with everybody that is a first timer on this program, up close and personal. Take us back to your childhood and bring us to where you got into boxing, what got you into boxing. It was not an easy path, especially for a woman when you were doing it. Take us in and around and about that.
Well, I was born in Minnesota. And then I moved to Kansas when I was young, 5 years old, and then I became the Island Girl. I went to Jamaica when I was 21, and I lived there for about 2 years. And it's so funny. I'll tell you when I met Barry, my trainer, Barry Becker, best boxing trainer ever. Okay, he'll go down in history, I think. But I met him at Bally's Gym in Overland Park, and at that time, Tommy Morrison was really huge in Kansas City. And he rented out a room in this Bally's for his little boxing gym. First time I met Barry, the first words out of his mouth were, "You should do something with those muscles besides just look good. You should box." And I was like, boxing was never in my life. I never watched a match. I didn't grow up around a family of boxing fans. And so it was just kind of, not even thought of. It was so out of the trajectory of my mind that But he kept telling me that every time I saw him at the gym, 3 to 4 days a week, I'd see him at the gym. We kind of always worked out the same times. And he just would say, "You should box, you should box." And he took me downstairs where Tommy Morrison worked out and showed me the gym and looked the bags. And, and I was a massage therapist at the time. My life, I was a mom. So my life was in the healing world. And boxing didn't seem part of that at all. And so 4 years later, I moved to Jamaica. I was there for about 2 years. He comes down about a year in, brings some friends, and he doesn't say, "How are you? How's everything going?" He throws the magazine of Christy Martin on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He goes, "You can beat her. I know you can beat her." And I was like, now when I was in Jamaica, I was doing a lot of meditation. And when in yoga we say that when you talk to God, it's called prayer, and when you listen to God, it's called meditation. So I was doing a lot of prayer and a lot of meditating, listening, and I was trying to figure out what my path in life was, where I was going to go. And I remember after I saw him that day, I thought, you know what, this guy's been bugging me about this for almost 5 years.
Mm.
Maybe I should listen. Maybe God is sending, because God sends people to us, right? And I
Oh
thought
yeah.
maybe God is
Yes.
sending this man to me. And I had the thought, and then he goes home and he goes, "Shadow box while you're here. Well, you can turn pro when you come home. Women's boxing is really coming up." And I don't do anything but keep doing my yoga and meditation. And 3 months later, I come home. I'm living with my mother again because I had no job, no car. My son's getting ready to start kindergarten. He finds my mom's name in the phone book because a nanny's a rare, rare name. He comes to the house and he goes, "I got you a fight. It's in 3 weeks. It pays $400."
Wow.
And I was like, really, I was like, $400 I could buy back in the 90s, you could buy a decent car for $400. I was like, okay, that's really how it started.
Wow. And you had no amateur fights, right?
None. I had no sports experience in
What
high school. I was not an athlete,
what
you
do you
know.
remember about that pro debut?
The pro fight, I fought a girl from Springfield, Missouri. She was like, she had like maybe 5 or 6 fights. She was supposed to be the big it girl in Springfield. And my first fight, and did it at this bar in Westport, which is like this bar area. And it was just, I was so scared. And I just remember, okay, I loved working out. So, and I just remember just beating her at 4 rounds. It was a 4 round fight. And then I fought her my rematch, the second fight. I beat her again in her hometown. And it just kind of started like that. I just kept telling Barry, I'm like, he kept saying, like, "You're going to be a world champion in 5 years." After that first fight, he's a prophet. I say now he's a prophet because everything he said really came true. After that first fight, he goes, "You're going to be a world champion in 5 years."
What do you think he saw in you? What do you think? Because I've done this. I've been blessed by God to, Bert Sugar paid me that compliment. Maybe you have the best eyes in boxing. What do you think he saw in you that he knew that you would become who you became in the ring?
Well, when I was in Jamaica, when he came down that week to visit with some friends, he saw me. He showed me the Sports Illustrated. A few days later we meet for lunch, and I'm on the beach wrestling with this Jamaican guy. And he said, even though he'd been telling me that for 4 years I should box, he said when he saw me wrestle this Jamaican guy, they called him the fireman. He would go on the up and down the beach and he'd blow fire out of his mouth, and he was like a really big strong guy, and he would do all these athletic things on stage. And he saw me wrestle him and he said, "I just wouldn't quit." He goes, I was just in the sand, and we were just, and he said he saw that no quit in me. And that's when he really knew, even though he'd been telling me for 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and in Lee's got a lot. Before I toss it to Lee, I'm going to get this out of the way. I think 3 fights later, you would take on somebody named Kathy DeLam, if I'm saying the name right.
Yeah.
And
Katie Dolan.
okay, in St. Joseph, Missouri, and obviously she suffered a brain injury. It's probably a real tough subject, but I want to get it out of the way. Many people think that a lot of that was the inspiration for Million Dollar Baby, you and her perhaps in that story. But I know it's difficult. But take us through what happened and how the heck you got through that, knowing because you're a person with great empathy. How did you get? Just take us through what happened, if you don't mind. I'll shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we even went to the fight, we had Joe Gallegos was the trainer manager of her. And Barry and I had been talking to him, and he said, yeah, he had a girl that could fight. And we were like, well, weight is she? And she goes, well, we could get her down to about, I was 135. So he said, she'll be about 145, maybe 8 to 10 pounds heavier. So we're like, oh, it's back in that day, it was hard to find girls. And so I was like, okay, 8 to 10 pounds. I was like, we agreed, we take the fight. We get to the weigh-ins the night before the fight. She's 37 pounds heavier than I am.
Oh,
So I
jeez.
was like, oh my God. And I was like, I mean, I really wanted to pull out. I was nervous, and a bigger fighter like that, it was my fourth pro fight.
Right.
She had had kickboxing experience. It was her first pro fight, but she'd had kickboxing and she'd been in the military, I believe our Air Force. She was, all that boot
She's about
camp and
five
stuff.
weight divisions heavier than you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then she had all that experience. So I thought, oh my God. So the next night when we go to the fight, all I'm thinking is, I just have to stay away from her and just keep throwing and just stay away and move and run. And because her weight was, and the fight, I just remember being nonstop. I was just, Barry's always been, your offense is your defense, punches and bunches. And he's always, you know, been that kind of trainer, it's more exciting. Fights are more exciting, I think. The more punches you throw, not, throw a jab and then let's dance. And so that was just kind of my style. And after the fight, I didn't hear till the next morning about her in the hospital. And we were just shocked. And we drove to St. Joe with my trainer and with my promoter. And um, yeah, it was just awful. I couldn't,
Did you
you know,
ponder retirement then?
I did. I
Mhm.
thought, this is not what I'm about. I don't want to, and it was just, it really shocked me. And I'll tell you that fight, I mean, that might have been why I ended up becoming so good so fast and beating Christy Martin in 2 years. She had 10 years, and because it really scared me how dangerous the sport is. That could have been me. That could have been anybody in the ring. And then the year after that, or 2 years after that, my friend Randy Carver died on ESPN after his fight. He went to the hospital. The fight was in Kansas City. I was ringside. So it's like I've been around all these. Becky Zerlentis was the first amateur fighter that died years later. I, the girl that fought Becky, I knew her trainer really well, Dave out of Boulder, Colorado, and I always felt like it was just kind of interesting how I was always around those kinds of. And I think it was God was giving me a message. Hey, you got to train. There is no.
You don't play boxing.
Yeah, thank you. You don't play boxing. You got to. So I think that really put the fear in me and the
Yeah.
work ethic in me, and that's why I really.
Is she still have you do you still keep in touch with her? I don't
You
know
know,
anything.
I've tried to, we don't talk, but her lawyer, there was a big story about her and I in Kansas City paper, and I got her lawyer's name was in it. And so over the years, a few times I've called her lawyer to see how she was doing. And the last I spoke to him, which was years ago, 10 years or more, he said that she was working again.
Oh,
She was driving again. I mean, it's like it sounds like she lives a few miles from her sister. She lives alone again. That was my last
yeah.
update on her. So it sounds like compared to some people, she's doing wonderful.
Well, thank you for sharing that as I flip to Lee.
Yeah.
Well, you were at a crossroads. You said you were pondering retirement after that fight. What brought you back?
Well, I really felt like the way that Barry had been talking to me about it for years, I almost felt like it was a calling in some way. And I feel like that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I was really at a point in a crossroads in my life where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What do I need to? And I felt like one of the things I've always been fascinated with is the potential, the human potential movement. And the famous psychologist back in early 1900s, James Allen, I think it was him that said, the average person uses like 10% of their capacity and their potential. And I always wanted to compete in sports in high school, but I didn't feel like the cool kid. I was very insecure growing up, very insecure. and I wasn't cool. So I would have been a great swimmer. The track coach in junior high tried to get me to join track, saw something in me when I was running, um, you know, but I didn't because I was just not the cool crowd.
I was
And
looking for that book. I have that book on my shelf, and my Patty, my famous lady who does, she put it away somewhere because I always like to look at that James Allen book. It does, even looking at it does something for me, but it's somewhere right back there.
yeah, yeah. So our thoughts are powerful. I was already into yoga and studying yoga. Yoga is not just the physical practice, it's your mind, it's the focus, it's really learning to that you can manifest whatever you achieve, whatever you think about, how to meditate and really focus your mind on those goals and let the other things. And so I was really involved in that part already of like trying to, discover myself and who I am. And that was really when all that kind of got awakened to me in my early 20s. So boxing just seemed like an interesting segue into that potential movement.
Yeah. So your nickname is Island Girl. What's the story behind that?
Well, I was in Jamaica, remember, and Barry, that's when he first came down and said, "You can beat her." So when I came home from Jamaica and he came to my house and said, "Hey, I got you a fight," we were talking like, well, what should my name be? And I didn't want to be one of those like killer gorilla or, one of those mean names. I was like, I don't know what my name's going to be. And somebody just that I'm one of Barry's friends, I think, said, "Boy, Island Girl." He's like, "Hey, Island Girl." He just kind of called me that because I just came home
Yeah,
from
and Lee,
Jamaica.
Samaya wears more colors than Smitty does. She's got she's got
I
she's
see
got
that.
she's got colors that I don't even have shoes, and you know how many shoes I have. But anyway,
Yeah.
I do love my color. I've always liked
yes,
wearing
and you
colorful
wear it
stuff.
well.
My closet is full of it. It's organized in shades and
So, in one of the biographies or one of the profiles that I read about you, it said that you were a weightlifter. Is that true?
I did Olympic weightlifting briefly in college for
Hmm.
maybe a year and a half or something. And that was my first, I was like 19. I had my son, I was almost 19. So I might have been 20 when I started doing that for about a year. And that was where I met my strength coach. He's amazing, Istvan Yavarek. He's just brilliant. And so I was doing I loved weightlifting and I quit weightlifting, believe it or not, because my butt was getting too big and I didn't want the big butts were not in yet. And
and
it was
and
like,
Lord knows Smitty loves some big butt, but you're getting me off on a tangent. Keep going, Lee.
Well, during your time in boxing, you competed in an era in which it was very difficult to get big time fights for
Yeah.
big time money. Describe the challenges and the hurdles that you had to face during that time, and how frustrated were you by everything that was going on?
yeah, I think for me that during that era, what was frustrating me and a lot of other fighters, I just got back from the International Women's Boxing Hall of Fame. So I got to talk to a lot of the girls that were in that era. I met Jill Matthews, Yvonne Trevino, I met her last year. Tracy Bird, of course, I've known her. We were all kind of talking a little bit about some of the stuff. One of the things I think that for us, it was a big time of like all these name fighters, right? You got Christy Martin and Deirdre Gogarty, which were the girls that were on the Showtime undercard, or I don't know what they fight
Tyson
Showtime
Showtime.
or
Bruno.
yeah, with Tyson under Tyson, and then you had the girls, the famous girls, Muhammad Ali, and then you had I think one of
Jackie
Foreman's
Frazier.
daughter,
Yeah.
Jackie Frazier, and then it was kind of that era, and then you had Mia St. John who was post nude, and several of the girls at the event they were like those were the name days when the girls had the names, didn't
Mhm.
really earn it from boxing necessarily. Christy and Deirdre did, but a lot of the girls were getting the names. So we were talking, the frustration at that time, I know, was a lot of, of course their name's going to draw a lot of attention and, um, but it was like, why are we here? It's about how we perform. It's not what our name is. And so it just seems there was a lot of frustration around that time about that.
Mhm.
And I remember sticking up for Layla because when she first came out and all the girls on the boards, back then it was those, what do they call those boards?
Marquise?
No, those internet boards before like Facebook and the social
The
media.
the chat rooms.
Yeah, there's all these little things, and people would talk, and people would just be so hard on her and on those girls. And I was like, you know what? You don't know. They could be really good. Give them a chance, you
Yeah.
know? Yes, of course they're going to draw a lot of attention their first fight. And I gave them so much credit because God, I don't think I could have done it. Had the whole world looking at me my first pro fight, you know? I mean, so there was it was kind of frustrating with that, you know, not being able to make money, but yet being ranked in the top 5 or 10 and just yeah, the you talked about the opportunities for fights were just not not a lot there, but also at the same time because of that fight with Christy and Deirdre, there were after that there were a lot of women on TV. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't see women on TV now. I mean, there were I was on an entire pay-per-view card with
Oh yeah,
women.
I was doing all the
Yes,
fights. Yeah, there were plenty of
yeah,
them. Yeah.
there started to really start to blossom some of these. You know, I saw Bridget Riley. The first girls I saw fight on TV were Bridget Riley, Tracy Bird, Hannah Fox, Frida Gibbs, Bonnie Canino. You know, I mean, there seemed to be Kathy Collins. You know, I was so excited when I started to meet those girls. I was like, oh my! I just met Kathy Collins a couple years ago. Tracy Bird finally a couple years ago. So it was. They were starting to really get some momentum, but I think what hurt the momentum in my eyes is the big name fighters. Christy, because I was supposed to fight her on Showtime. I don't know if you know that. She pulled out of our fight in November of 1998. And
Yeah.
because the contract said she had to either pay me or they had to fight me, Don King put her on this obscure cable channel, which is where I met you, Smitty, in the Fort Lauderdale at the War Memorial Museum. What was that called?
War Memorial
War
Auditorium.
Memorial. That's like
Yeah.
a tongue twister. War
I
Memorial.
am looking
War
at a thing. I
Memorial.
fought there one time. I fought there. I did. I had one of my
Really?
pro fights there.
Smitty, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
met you where you fought. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I remember so much about, and it's funny because it was USSB and Colleen Galloway was the real brainchild behind that. It's funny because that network, had it stayed on the air, would have changed boxing in this country forever because they were 24 hours. They were smart enough to hire me and have me doing a lot of stuff, uh, despite how humble I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were going to feature and it's funny, well, because I know Lee's going to go to that fight soon. Now, I remember going to that fight and watching that fight and calling that fight. And one of the things I even said to Lee this morning, Christy realized right away, probably for the first time in her career, that she was fighting somebody that was actually stronger and hit harder than even she did. And that I could feel it and see it during the fight. I had already called some of Christy's fights. And, rather than box her or move around or, you were right there, just in the pocket. There was no feeling out process. It's a
Yeah.
great fight, hell of a fight, close fight. But in fact, Lee, take us into that.
Yeah, right. It was on USSB,
That's right.
and it was delayed a month because I think on the broadcast they said that Christy was under the weather, and of course on the night of this fight she was under the weather again, but they decided to fight. You were the underdog, she was the A side, but from the very start you came right at her. You matched strength for strength. You hurt her a couple of times. You left her face bruised up. What was the fight plan going in? And for those of us who will never be in the ring with Christy Martin, what was it like to fight her?
You know, going into that fight, and Barry told me every trainer in Kansas City bet, I didn't find this out till after the fight, but had bet Barry thousands or more that I would lose. Barry was the only guy in Kansas City. He told me, you got to go in there and you got to fight her. This is what he said: fight her like you're on the inside of a telephone booth. Words out of his mouth. What was interesting, all the other trainers in Kansas City, like, no, no, you got to, don't get inside. That's her game. You got to get on, you got to jab, you got to stick and move, you got to move, use the ring and all that. Well, we get there that night to that. I don't know if you were back in the backstage, Smitty, where all the fighters were.
Yeah.
My dressing room was about the size of 2 phone booths.
Oh my
My
God.
wingspan is 69 inches. I couldn't raise my arms straight either direction I turned, and half of the room was a counter. So it was like with a bunch of lighted mirrors for people to do their makeup backstage. I couldn't even warm up in that room. And Barry kept saying, honey, you got to come out here. We got to warm up out here. I'm like, no, I'm not. He knows I like to be in my room. I don't want to be out anywhere. And so I literally warming up, I'll stand up. I was like this. I couldn't move.
Yeah.
It was a dressing closet.
Well, there again, you got God working for you in that created a phone booth before the fight began.
Yeah, so I think that was not an accident that I got that little room because surely there was a room I could have used in that whole big thing. And then coming out that night, she came out to my music. And that was kind of upsetting. And even that morning of the fight, guess what? Jim Martin calls me around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to tell me something that I already knew, just to make sure that I knew it. That was the fight that I learned to turn my phone off in the hotel rooms. I learned a lot in that fight about how people will just, take whatever advantage they can, but to get into your head. But see, my head was my most strongest thing. I was physically strong too, but my mindset from years of meditation, your mind becomes like a shield in some ways that you just can learn to so many ways. But anyway, so going into that fight, I remember at one point we were jabbing and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm jabbing with Christy Martin.
Well,
But
how's her power? Did she hurt you at all?
she didn't hurt me like where I was buzzed or anything. She
Mhm.
hits hard, but she didn't hit as hard as the girls. I thought girls had hit a lot harder. The hardest I've ever been hit, this girl named Vicky Woods here in Kansas City. She was this farm girl. She must, on the farm pitching hay her whole life and just doing stuff on the farm. That girl hit me. I thought I saw uh, pink elephants with polka dots. That
Honey,
was
I
the
saw
hardest.
that a few nights ago after a fourth glass of wine, but that's another story.
Well, you also, you cut her up. She was bruised. She was bleeding. How much encouragement did you get from doing that? I said, "Oh my God, I hurt Christy Martin. I could put her away." What were you thinking during the match?
I just kept listening to my coach in the corner and just doing what he said and just focus. I don't, you know, I try to keep my mind present and um, I just knew that I had to keep going forward. And here's the interesting thing: a year and a half ago, I got at the Women's Boxing Hall of Fame. I got the Lifetime Achievement Award. All these awards. It's so interesting. I feel like people are still kind of playing favorites to her a little bit. And, you know, all these girls are inducted and they talk about, oh, she beat this girl and she beat that girl and she did this and she did that. They introduce me and they say that I'm a holistic healer.
Oh, jeez.
They say nothing about my boxing, nothing, because Christy's in the front row.
Yeah.
So I get up there a week before I got there. A friend of mine had texted me the back page of Christy's book. It says my name's in the back. It says Sumya Anani headbutting. So I'm getting my lifetime achievement. I'm bragging about my trainer, and I go, and Christy, I go, I just want to say, I said, I told everybody she put me in her book that I headbutt her in the back, but I just want to say to you, Christy, if I headbutt you, you headbutt me too, because we were two inside fighters.
Right.
And Harold Letterman, you remember he was at the fight. I
Yeah.
met him years later. I went up to him and I go, Harold, my name is Samaya. And he goes, I know who you are. I was at that fight with Martin. He said, he gave me the best compliment I've ever gotten. He said, he is such a sweet man. He's like you, Smitty. You guys are just salt of the earth people.
Thank
He
you.
said, he said, your fight with Christy was like Marco Antonio Barrera and Eric Morales, their
Mm.
trilogy. He goes, it was exciting from the opening bell. He goes, that fight should have been a trilogy. She should have rematched you. And that was one of the things, going back to your other question, what my era, one of the reasons women boxing kind of stalled out is because the name fighters, the Christy Martins, the Layla, they weren't really
Lucia
going at
Riker. Lucia
Lucia
Riker.
Riker.
Yeah.
They weren't really going after the big fights. They were going after the girls they could beat. Christy Martin, when she fought Deirdre Gogarty, she outweighed Deirdre by 18 pounds. Christy fought a lot of girls who were lighter than her. That's why when you said she finally fought somebody who was stronger, because I was her weight. I was her
Yeah.
weight. And, Layla avoided Ann Wolf and avoided Veronica Simmons. And they were strategic in their business of boxing. See, that's something I never understood, that boxing was a business.
Yeah.
And it was a sport to me, and
It's a sport.
I wanted to fight the best. I wanted to explore my potential. I didn't play a chess game with, well, I'm not going to fight her because she might beat me, and I'm gonna go over here. We fought everybody in my era, and I feel like some of those name fighters could have helped the sport continue the building and the momentum if they would have fought some of those strategic,
Yeah.
Layla Ali and Ann Wolf, Sumya Anani and Christy Martin, Lucia Riker. I challenged her for 8 years after that fight
Yeah.
and didn't
Well,
get a fight with
let's
her.
take a quick listen to. I caught up with both you and Christy after the fight, and here's what y'all had to say.
Well, this girl.
All right, here we go. Let's go to Jimmy Smith.
With Sumya Anani and a tremendous victory. What a battle for the entire 10 rounds. What were the keys to victory?
What were the keys to victory? Stay on her. Stay on her and don't get off. But I did. I got off, and they kept telling me in the corner to stay on her. And I guess I was pacing myself. I haven't went 10 rounds, so I was maybe trying to just make sure I had enough gas at the end, because I know that sometimes she runs out of gas towards the 5th, 6th, 7th round.
Did she hurt you at all during the fight? There were a couple of times some of the body shots looked like you may have been hurt.
I think her body shots didn't really hurt me, but she hit me a couple times to the head.
This certainly was a learning experience. Your 12th professional fight, but I bet you learned more in this one than the entire 11 before.
Yeah, because she's had the experience, and when you're in the ring with somebody who has experience, you learn. Whether you want to or not, you learn. You learn the hard way sometimes.
You mentioned that she was, you idolized her. What was it like fighting and now beating your idol, Christy Martin?
It was wild. It was, because in my journal, I keep a journal, and like 2 years ago, when I first fought, I found a picture of her in this magazine, I don't know what it was, and I cut it out and put it in my journal, because she looks like my neighbor, Rhonda, except for Christy's got brown hair, my neighbor's got blonde hair. And I just wrote, I wonder if I'll fight her sometime. It was just kind of like one of those, and all the synchronistic actions that have happened led me up to this event. It was really weird.
Well, what about a rematch?
Spirit of champ. Yeah, she deserves a rematch. I mean, it's a hard fight.
All right.
Good fight.
Congratulations on a great win. Certainly a fight that could have gone either way. Christy, it was very close the entire 10 rounds. Did you think you won the fight?
No, I didn't win the fight. It was a good fight, but I want to say first of all to my family, I love you. I'm sorry if I disappointed you, but I gave it my all.
You always give it your all, and you went into this fight with a cold and certainly with some personal problems. Did that affect you at all?
Don't make excuses. I'm not that kind of fighter. I came in the ring. That was my choice. I did the best I could do tonight. She was just a stronger fighter. She hit me with her head a lot, and it wore on my face so bad that I just couldn't keep taking a punishment, so I couldn't stand in there and exchange punches.
Would you like a rematch?
You know what? I told Jim before we came into the ring tonight, I said, this is it. If we can't fight Riker and we can't fight Kathy Collins, I'm done. I'm ready to move on with my life. We have a great 135-pounder, Luis Ramos, a good heavyweight, Nate Hallett, and I want to spend my time trying to promote and help Jim train those guys. And you know what? I made over $1 million, and there's no other woman that's going to come close to that. And I would have had a tall school for 40 years to make that much money. So I'm way ahead of the game.
Well, and you're certainly destined for the Hall of Fame, but based on your performance, I still think you have some fights left in you. Congratulations on a great fight.
Thank you very much.
Let's throw it back to Colonel Bob Sheridan at ringside.
Wow, that mustache of mine, boy. Is there a way AI can change Smitty's look back then? But anyway, it was good that Christy was humble after that, and she gave you a lot of credit. Of course, you were humble in the way you accepted it, but you could see that both of you had been in a fight. Lee does CompuBox. Lee, I would love to have known I guess there probably wasn't CompuBox numbers for that fight, but I would have loved to have known how many Sumya threw.
Oh, that would be a fun fight to count. I do retro counts. So.
Yeah, maybe I would love to know.
I
know
would
you
love
got
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts after Jimmy Lennon Jr. said that it was a majority decision? Did you think you were going to get it, or do you think they were going to rob you?
We thought that we might get robbed. Florida, it's her home state. It's a Don King card, and I had not signed a contract with him. And so I knew I had to just go forward. And so we were really happy that we got the win and that it was fair, and because, you've heard lots of other stories where people are robbed. So yeah, I was lucky in that respect that I got the win.
So the fight was billed as being for the WBC's pound for pound championship. Did you ever get the belt?
No, no.
Jeez.
And
Go figure.
they don't even remember that was the first women's title fight, to my recall. It was supposed to be the first women's title fight, but I know we should
It just didn't
start.
work out. You fought during an era where there were no WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO belts, but you did win, the IBA lightweight title. You won the IBA championship at 140. You won welterweight title belts from the IBA and WIBF. How much satisfaction did you derive from winning those belts?
Well, it was just so cool. Barry, like I said, the first fight, he said, "You're going to be a world champion in 5 years." My first title fight was Liz Mueller 5 years later. And so it was so cool to see him. Um, I give all the credit to my trainer. Barry is such a good trainer. He just knew how to talk to me and how to motivate me. And he was just so inspirational in his skill and his prowess. You know, he just, he would have been a world champion if he would have not had to work. Back in the 70s, he had to work, he had family, and he had to work. So I just feel like in some way I kind of gave him his world title that he deserved because he would have done it. This guy has had so many street fights, stories of him. It's just so fun to listen to
I
him.
know I always enjoyed talking to him.
Yeah.
Maybe one time we'll get him, we'll get him on, and
Yeah.
yeah, he has some interesting stories.
You cannot shut him up about boxing. You could start talking about fire extinguishers, any topic that is as far away from boxing as possible, and he'll
I've
somehow
got a fire
find a way.
extinguisher right in my gadget bag here, right?
I
Yeah.
figured he'll
Yeah.
turn it into a boxing conversation somehow. It's like, what?
Yeah. So you were elected into I think it was the International Women's Boxing Hall of Fame, if I got
Mhm.
the name correctly. How did you find out about your election and how did you react to it?
Yeah, well, do you guys know Jack Dunn? Did you know
I
Jack
don't.
Dunn, Smitty?
No.
He used to write for some of these Max Boxing and, maybe Doghouse Boxing. I'm not even sure if those websites are still around.
Max
Yeah.
Are they?
Boxing is.
Max is,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, he was a writer and he told me that he had written an induction letter. And then I think Sue emailed me or called me and said that I got in. And it was so, I couldn't even go the first time. When I was inducted in 2016, but I couldn't go to receive till 2019. So it was just an honor to meet all the girls that I got that inspired me. The Bridget Riley. I just met Bridget Riley last year. I met Tracy Bird 3 or 4. I mean, these events are so exciting to hobnob and talk and hear stories but it's just really amazing.
And
Really
again,
amazing.
I'm not part of the voting, but I host the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and certainly you would have my vote of endorsement for you for what you did, when you did it, how you did it, but also the way you're doing it now. I call it LAB, life after boxing, which is
Oh,
very
the
difficult for
lab.
very. That's
I
what I
like it.
call it. Yeah, talk about life after boxing, LAB for the island girl, Sumya Anani.
Yes. Well, my life is, I'm so blessed right now. After I stopped boxing, I started working in a junior college. Well, I was already working there, teaching yoga and weights and working in the health department. In 2010, I opened my first studio, Aerial Silks. I had started doing, you've seen Cirque du Soleil where they climb
Yes.
all the apparatus and the trapeze and the rope. I started studying that. I wanted something physical after I retired from boxing, and I just started traveling the country and Canada. And I ended up opening my own center in 2010. I do summer camps for kids where we teach 7 habits of health. We talk about um, all kinds of things. I'm going to walk you over to the building. It's right across the street from this one. Um, so teaching yoga and weight training and the silks class, the aerial yoga, all these things that are good for your spine to help you to get people out of pain. I work with so many different um, people from people who are like had hip surgery, shoulder surgery, teaching them the gyrotonic method. to Pilates. I've got certified in so many different movement practices. And so this, what I've done now from the one building, I've expanded now. I've got 4 buildings in Mission, Kansas. And it really is my mission to help bring health to my community. My children's book is it's going to be published this year. It goes along with my center. And I want to write a teacher's work manual for these 7 habits because I'm going to franchise this, what I'm doing for these kids.
Awesome.
Because I
Awesome.
bring hundreds of kids into these field trip centers. And how many girls have I talked to, even just this last weekend? Female fighters who were at the top of the game, they were world champions or world contenders, and they come home and they retire and they are depressed. Some of them have gone back to cleaning houses. Some of them have gone back, they don't even know. Some of them have gone back to living with their parents. You know, I've talked to so many girls over the last 12 years, and this would be a model they could franchise. They could make money. They could teach health and do, meet lots of people. They could, it's just, I'm
Well,
really
you can feel
excited.
your inspiration. Lee, isn't this reminding you a little bit of DDP, my good friend Diamond Dallas Page, who
Yes.
I don't know if you know who Diamond Dallas Page. He's a Hall of Fame wrestler, and I got him in the business, or I helped get him in the
Wow.
business of wrestling, and he's all into yoga. It's called DDP yoga, and he saved so many lives of
Yes.
especially ex-wrestlers that are down and out and going through all kinds of physical and mental
Oh, so
issues.
many.
Why don't you, before we get you out of here, why don't you take us, where are you taking us?
Well, across the street, this is my one studio. This is one building.
Okay.
This is gyrotonic equipment, and this is really good for the spine and neck health. I've met so many fighters. They have all kinds of arthritis in their neck.
I
and all
do.
kinds
Yeah, I do as
of
well.
problems. Yeah, you get on a yoga wall, you will be amazed.
Will
Or
it make me
gyrotonic.
taller? Will this make me taller?
You can keep your height. Yes, my yoga teacher, she gained about an inch of height
Oh, I
from
could
doing
use that,
yoga.
ladies and gentlemen.
So you get on a yoga wall and you traction your spine, you will
Right?
definitely gain height. So look, I'm walking. My
Hopefully.
buildings are within about 2 blocks of each other, and they all have different modalities of fitness. There's the building from the outside.
Okay.
Okay.
I have the city coming on Thursday finally to make sure we've met code. And there's the Eldecon, the electrical engineering, finishing up some stuff. But this building, it's gonna
No, we
blow your
haven't
socks.
lost the feed yet. That's
It's
good.
gonna
Thank
knock
God.
your tie-dye socks off, you guys.
Okay.
So there's 7 habits of health, each with the color of the rainbow. We enter the green room. So the green habit is nature and wildlife. So this
Okay.
is where we're going to teach kids about plants, about oceans, air pollution, how to protect them. We come out here and then you see all the colors in the hallway.
Wow.
Look at the bathroom. Look at the tile. And a
Who knew
pink
we were going to
toilet.
get a tour?
Yeah.
Look at that pink toilet. And the
Wow.
counter.
Do you have you a Smitty room yet?
Well, we have a room where there's going to be a video stuff. Yes, a little office. You can come. I want you to come. I want you guys to come. Here's the teachers' conference room.
Okay.
It's got all the colors of the rainbow. So the teachers
is
will make
awesome.
lesson plans here.
Compliments to the artist.
And then the
Yeah.
first habit of health is nutrition. So we enter the kitchen.
Wow.
And the floor, I made it so that they could play chess and checkers with
Okay.
those big pieces. And then the
Talk about
aerial.
playing with your food.
We're making foods and learning to make healthy meals. And this is the aerial studio. The silk points are way up there. Can you see where all those little silver things?
Mhm.
That's where the silks will be hanging down. So they'll be doing here. And then this can be my boxing room or my hammock room. So we'll hang bags and do fitness here.
That is awesome.
It's a 2-story building. Look at the little toilet. I have 5 bathrooms, 2 little toilets. Look at that.
I think what she's trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, is that it's a Smitty toilet. I think that was the segue there.
Well, it's for 2 kiddos. They're so. I can't wait to show you the bathrooms up here. This is the upstairs. We have the aerial viewing area where you can look through the windows and see that when the silks are hanging.
It's a damn workout walking through this thing here.
Yes.
I've already lost 4 pounds.
Well,
Look at
she's
the
in shape.
bathroom.
Yeah.
Look at that tile.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. So
And the
you're talking
things-
about franchising this, right?
Yes, we're going to
Okay.
franchise this. Look at
Do
this.
you have a
screen.
website? You have a website you should share.
Yeah, right. The website's going to be redone. It's
Okay.
I am learning to the number 2 fly.com.
I am learning
Here's
to
my
fly.
office.
Okay.
I got another rainbow room with the sun.
That's awesome.
The blue room is family community. We talk about volunteering and, how to make friends. Yellow room is learning and self-confidence. We do all kinds of art projects and learn about things. And then purple is world harmony. There's a room for each habit. This is like a little center area. And then the pink room is the last habit. This is
Wow.
goodness and wholeness. This is like the spirituality room. We talk about developing our character traits and yeah.
It's great to see Layla Ali has done so much following her career, and to see what you are doing and continuing to do. But there are so many that you fought against, and Layla fought against, and fought, that aren't able to do all of this stuff. So I really hope not only that you can encourage the general public, but also perhaps girls that, like you say, aren't doing so great right now following their pugilistic careers.
Yes, I handed out flyers at the event this weekend because I expanded because it was just I was getting so many people wanting to come.
Yeah.
They want to bring the whole 140 kids, 120 kids to my field trip center. So this can be done anywhere.
Yeah.
Any city would love this.
Well, listen,
opportunity.
before we let you go, I'm going to ask you my standard question that I've asked
Uh-oh.
to
Uh-oh.
hundreds of great fighters, and it's
No.
you got to pay attention to this one because it's important, and I want you to look right into your camera as I ask you, how does Sumya Anani want to be remembered as a fighter, but more importantly as a person?
I want to be remembered. That's a good question, Trey. Let me come in here so I can look you right in the eye. I just want to be remembered as somebody who came in and was a hard worker and was kind. I never was mean to anybody in boxing. Outside, people, you see so many stories, right? Weigh-ins and just being kind. Just be remembered as being a kind person. Tried to make a difference.
And you certainly have done that. It's been a pleasure to get to know you over the years. And are you going to be in Canastota this year? Are you going to come by? I know I've seen you there. I know you try to get if you have time.
Yeah, I would love to go. I heard that Kenny Bayless is going in.
Yes.
Yeah, I was excited for that. Saw him this last weekend. I would love to go. The last few years I've been doing these Hall of Fames that I wish I would have really known about them years ago. They're so fun.
Yeah.
Meeting with everybody and oh my gosh. So I would love to go.
Well, I hope you do. It was been a pleasure for me to get to know you over the years and to call your fights, and my gut feeling. God's given me this interesting ability to read people, and I always knew from the get-go, you were a hell of a fighter, but I think even if there is such a thing, even a better person, and that's at the end of the day what's most important. And we thank you for sharing some time with us on In This Corner, and we'll certainly do it again. We'll certainly do it again at some point.
Thank you, Smitty. You too. Thank you for being such a great guy all these years. You're just like I said, salt of the earth. It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
That fight at the weigh-ins. And Lee, thank you so much.
All right. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, Lee's going to go over his top 10 female fighters of all time. Sumya Anani, it's been a great, that was a great interview. We'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Wow, that was some interesting stuff with the Island Girls. Sumya Anani, former 3-weight division champion. I really do think that she should and will be in the International Boxing Hall of Fame one day, Lee.
Well, she's halfway there. She's on the ballot.
Yeah.
And as long as she's on the ballot, she's got a chance.
Yep. All right. You know what? It's time to talk about one of your favorite people, one of your favorite dentists. And I know if you needed any implant work, you would go see Dr. Nam.
Fun.
That's right, Dr. Nam Phan. He is ubiquitous. He is in New York, New Jersey, obviously in Las Vegas. He has a couple of locations here. One of them's 2121 East Flamingo Road. But I just like to give out the number because this is the way you can, no matter where you're at listening to this, if you need any dental implant type of work. He specializes in full mouth cosmetic veneers, crowns, dental implants, as I mentioned, extractions and sedations. He's consistently helped his patients achieve their ideal smiles by offering a range of affordable and financial options tailored to their needs. And that seems a little separate from the great work that he does, but a lot of people can't get the things that they need to get done with their mouth because of the financial end of it. And he tries to help people. He is not out there to make a buck. He's out there to do the great work and make it affordable for all of you. Again, he is Dr. Nam Phan, and I want to give you this number, 702-637-9168, 702-637-9168. If you need any kind of dental work, especially the kind that involved implants, Dr. Nam Phan, as we head into our final segment, and we're going to be in overtime again, but I wanted to do this, and you took the time to do it. I asked you a week or so ago, hey, who's your top 10 female fighters of all time? And you've come up with this list.
I came up with this list, and when we had Ben Dowdy on the show a couple of weeks ago, he had all these caveats and stuff about how he hates to put together lists like these, recency bias, historical bias, and all this stuff. I gotta tell you, putting together this list was a very difficult one because there's so many great choices, and it'll probably change over the next few years as some of the fighters of today go into history. But as of right now, this is my top 10. And starting at number 10 is Lucia Riker. This was the hardest spot to fill because of the names I had to leave out. But the reason why I have her at number 10 is because while she didn't have the opportunity to fight for championships like today's fighters do, anyone who ever watched her fight knew that she was an elite talent. She was an excellent technician. She had outstanding shot-for-shot power. And she retired with a spotless record of 17-0 with 14 knockouts. In terms of those belts, she won the WIBF and IBO belts at 140, but she never defended them. That's the way the game was back then. And while she had several big names on her record, she didn't get to meet them during their primes. For example, future Hall of Famer Marcela Acuna was 1-0. And fighting way above her weight class when Riker stopped her in round 5. Chevelle Hallback, who's still fighting, I think, in her 50s. She was 1-0 when Riker took her out in 5. And Andrea Deschamps, the first fighter to beat Christy Martin, was 13-5-1 and was on a 2-fight losing streak when Riker stopped her in 3. Probably her most notable victim was future Hall of Famer Jane Couch, who she defeated over 8 rounds in her next to last fight. Another factor in her favor was that many observers at the time believed that she would have beaten Christy Martin had they met in their respective primes. And given their undeniable link, it is ironic that Riker and Christy Martin made up the first modern class of the International Boxing Hall of Fame's female division. So then we move on to number 9, and that spot belongs to Laila Ali. During her 7-year professional career, she retired with an undefeated record of 24-0 with 21 knockouts. And she proved beyond doubt that she inherited her father's good looks and his marketing skills. But the reason why she's here is because she also passed the eye test in the ring. She fought with a pleasing blend of speed and power. The 2 biggest names on her record were Jackie Frazier-Lyde, the daughter of Joe Frazier, and Christy Martin, who was far past her prime and fought 25 pounds above her best weight. It really wasn't fair. She did win a variety of title belts at super middleweight, including the inaugural WBC title when she stopped Aaron Tohill in June 2005. She was also a member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame class of 2021, along with arch rival Ann Wolfe. one of the fighters that I considered for this list. Unlike her father, she got out of boxing at exactly the right time. She was 29 years old, and because of that, she walked away with her faculties intact. Next spot, number 8, is the aforementioned Christy Martin. The coal miner's daughter earned her place in the Hall of Fame by blazing the trail that led to the first women's boxing revolution in the 1990s. That trail began with her being featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated, as Sumya Anani said, and her notoriety only grew with her rugged 6-round decision win over Deirdre Gogarty on the Tyson Bruno 2 undercard. Her victims include Laura Serrano, Isra Gigra, Marcelo Cunha, Belinda Larquente, Kathy Collins, Mia St. John, and Lisa Hollowine, who Christy went on to marry. She retired with a record of 49-7-3, and her 32 knockouts remain the most ever scored by a female fighter. Next spot is number 7, Jessica Bopp. She is from Argentina, and the biggest reason she's on this list is because she was a widely recognized world champion for the better part of 12 years. She held belts at 108 and 112 for various times during her career. And say what you want about all the alphabet belts that are available these days, but like it or not, a fighter is judged by how well he or she does when a world title is at stake. And in that regard, Jessica Bopp was 27-2 with 12 knockouts. That's a really good record. And in these fights, her victims included championship caliber opponents like Nancy Franco, Daniela Bermudez twice, Annabelle Ortiz, Karina Moreno, Ibeth Silva, and she also beat Hall of Famer Jessica Chavez. She actually beat her twice. She also passed the eye test because at her best, she was a very good technical boxer with excellent mobility, timing, ring smarts, and stamina. Most of her fights went the distance, and she never got tired. The 6th fighter on the list is Naoko Fujioka, who will become a first-year eligible for the International Boxing Hall of Fame next year. And she's on this list because she's the Bernard Hopkins of the women's game, because despite turning pro at 34, she became the only Japanese fighter, male or female, to win widely recognized world titles in 5 weight classes: 105, 108, 112, 115, and 118. She went 11-3-1 in world title fights. She fought 13 championship caliber opponents, and she went 10-3 against them. And she was an effective high-end campaigner at age 46 when she lost on points to Marlon Esparza in what was to be her final professional fight. Her victims included Hall of Famer Jessica Chavez, 8-year minimum weight champion Annabelle Ortiz, Mariana Juarez, and Yokasta Valle, who is still a pound-for-pound level fighter today. 5th fighter on the list, Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor is among the greatest female fighters of all time because of her accolades as both an amateur and a pro. She was a 2-time Olympian for Ireland, winning gold in 2012 and getting to the quarterfinals in 2016. While as a pro, she is one of only 2 women to become an undisputed champion in multiple weight classes in the 4-belt era, 135 and 140. Her achievements have served to lift the women's game in Europe to incredible heights, and that gives her an extra layer of gravitas. She's 38 years old now. She's still active, and to date, she has faced 12 championship caliber opponents, and she's gone 13-1 against them. That's a really good record. Next up is Amanda Serrano. Serrano's nickname is the Real Deal, and that's for a good reason. She's the only fighter, male or female, to win widely recognized world titles in 7 weight classes. Now, Manny Pacquiao won titles in 8 weight classes, but 2 of them were Ring Magazine titles, not alphabet titles. All of Serrano's titles were of the alphabet variety. By the way, her belts range from 115 to 140. And she is the only fighter to win belts at 115 and 140. And she did it in the toughest way possible. In one 132-day span, She won the 140-pound title, and then she lost all that weight, went down to 115, and won the belt there. The 36-year-old Serrano remains active, like Katie Taylor, and her record to date is 47-3-1 with 31 knockouts. Those 31 knockouts are second only to Christy Martin in women's boxing history, and she has faced 15 championship caliber fighters, going 16-3 with 7 knockouts. I personally believe that she beat Katie Taylor in both of their fights, and that, along with her accolades, I thought put Amanda Serrano slightly ahead of Katie Taylor. The third-ranked fighter on my list is Regina Halmich, who was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame's class of 2022. She is third on my list because of her sustained excellence throughout her 13-year professional career. She not only put together a record of 54-1-1 with 16 knockouts, her record in world title fights was 44-1-1 with 13 knockouts. Yes, this was during the era in which there were no WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO belts. But Halmich won championships in 3 weight classes, 108, 112, and 115. And she logged an incredible 390 rounds in championship competition. She defended the WIBF flyweight title 28 times in her 2 reigns. She recorded 10 defenses of the WIBF light flyweight title, and she avenged the draw that she had against Elena Reed with a points victory 4 fights later. She never got the chance to face the only fighter to have beaten her. Also, she retired as a world champion after putting together a 9-fight winning streak and a 47-fight unbeaten streak. That is a reign of excellence that is almost unmatched. The second fighter on my list, Claressa Shields. Now, she is a polar opposite of Halmich in that the self-proclaimed GWOAT has stuffed a ton of accomplishments into her 16 professional fights. She is the only fighter, male or female, to win undisputed championships in 3 weight classes during the 4-belt era: super welterweight, middleweight twice, and heavyweight. She was also a unified champion at 168, and she has faced and beaten 12 championship caliber opponents in her 16 bouts. She often defeated them in dominant fashion as well. And then there was her amateur career, a career that saw her win back-to-back gold medals in 2012 and 2016. And she's the only American boxer of any gender to win in back-to-back fashion at the Olympics. She had a 77-1 amateur career, and that loss to Savannah Marshall at the 2012 World Amateur Championships was avenged with a 10-round unanimous decision in England to win the undisputed middleweight title for the second time. And if you include her amateur records, Shields is currently on a 66-fight winning streak that has lasted nearly 13 years. And finally, number 1. And as incredible as the records of Halmich and Shields are, the championship resume assembled by the First Lady, Cecilia Brækhus, is almost beyond belief. Not only was she the first woman to become an undisputed champion in the 4-belt era among the women, she remained undisputed for nearly 6 years, and she recorded 10 successful defenses of those belts, a record that will likely never be broken given today's boxing politics. She held the WBA and WBC welterweight titles for 11 years, 157 days. That's second only to Joe Louis's 11-year, 255-day reign as heavyweight champion. And like Louis, she recorded 25 successful defenses of the WBC title, which is tied for the longest unbroken string of defenses in boxing history. Moreover, she defended the WBA belt 24 times, the WBO title 22 times, and the IBF strap 10 times. She was 26-2-1 with 7 knockouts in widely recognized title fights, and she fought 15 championship caliber opponents, going 15-2-1 against them. At age 43, she is still active, and she is the current WBC secondary titleist at 154, thanks to her 10-round unanimous decision against Marcielo Cornejo last August. And there is my list, at least for now.
Yeah. And I laid out, because you had so much written down, I didn't want to interfere.
Yeah.
When people would ask you, okay, well, are these the best, your top 10 female fighters, or is it all really, in your opinion, based not on how they stack up fistically, but more when you add up the whole resume and everything? This is basically so much based on just what they accomplished. It's tough too. It's really tough when you're that was a really tough list, because so many of those you can plug one here, over here, one, and then you left some off, the list and stuff.
I hated to do that.
Yeah, well, that's part and parcel of when you're doing it, but you did a great job, and certainly it gives people food for thought, a lot of it, with those 10, and probably a lot of people listening didn't know the accolades and plaudits, and some of those statistics are overwhelming. You have somebody like Abrakis and Regina who for me don't stack up the eye test like Lucia Riker, let's say, but yet she only had 16 fights because of when she fought Lucia. It's really difficult, and you have to factor those things in. So that's why you're great at doing it. And we're not out of time. We're over time again.
Yes.
So we're gonna wrap it up, and we want to thank the Island Girl. It was a really interesting interview. I enjoyed that with Sumya Anani. He is Lee Groves, and actually we're going to take the next. Why are we taking next week off? Is it all because of you?
It is all because of me, and thanks to Joe Tessitore, who I got to know very well when I worked CompuBox cards with ESPN. He got me tickets to WrestleMania.
Wow!
And so I'm going to be flying to Las Vegas. I'm going to be it's my first WWE event. I've been following wrestling about as long as I've been following boxing, and I'm a big fan of it. And so I'm going to take in my first event. I'm going to stay at your house with your dog.
Yeah, we are, and we're excited because you might not see Lee anymore after this, because he has challenged me to 4 rounds inside the Smitty gym, and I've got to get myself in shape for you. So I'm a little nervous, man. One thing I am determined to do, I'm determined to keep Charlie away from you as best I can. I think he'll end up loving you, and also to teach you how to hit the speed bag. That's what we're seriously going to do.
I really wanted to do that.
And we'll return in a few weeks. We got a lot of stuff going on, but we're way out of time. Thanks to Sumya Anani. Great stuff there. So long, everybody.